What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. In this video, I'm going to explain how you can find the most productive banks in the spring by looking for hidden irregularities that you can't see with the naked eye and most anglers completely miss. You definitely want to stay tuned for this one. Let's get into it. Today, I'm on Beaver Lake in Arkansas. It's the first day of April and water temperatures are in the low 60s. Because the water warmed up really quickly over the past couple of weeks, I'm not sure if the bass are in the pre-spawn, spawn, or even post-spawn mood. So I started on a flatter bank that had potential to hold all three stages of fish.
Got him. There we go. Ooh, good one right here. That's what I'm talking about. I knew this was gonna freaking work, guys. This is a good one on the swing head here for beaver. Oh, get up here, fish. Nice largemouth. Guys, I am using a Google Earth trick today to find some sneaky rocky spots that I know a lot of guys are not fishing. You're gonna want to stay tuned to this video to learn this trick because I think this is going to be the deal today, guys, and that's already a really good one right there. That's a beautiful beaver bass. Anything over that 2.5 pound range on beaver is a big fish, and that came on a little swing head here, 3/4 ounce with a Crush City cleanup craw. Beautiful fish right there. There we go, guys. That's actually a 3-pounder right there. Lock that fish in. That is a beautiful beaver bass. 5 of those I'll take every single day out here. Love that. There's another look at that swing head I'm throwing, and right now this is the perfect bait for the scenario I'm in. The air temps dropped the last couple of days, dropping the water temperature a little bit here. I'm further up the river on Beaver Lake, and I've just found a really flat bank here. It's kind of a spawning bank, but the thing about this that is a little bit special is that we have a rock transition down this bank that you can somewhat see when you look at the shore, but it's a lot more evident when you look at Google Earth. And I'm just trying to work this little rock transition off the bank, not right up against the bank, but maybe a half a cast to a cast length off the bank with the swing head. And that fish bit about halfway between the bank and the boat here, just firing that swing head, working it down there in those rocks.
In the past, I've explained how to use Google Earth Pro on a PC to find historical images of your lake when it's drawn down. You can then mark areas in Google Earth and transfer those waypoints to your fish finder. This process actually just got a lot easier because you can now get the Google Earth app on iPhone and iPad. So here's what the app looks like, and the first thing you need to do is create a new project by pressing the button in the center of the screen. Next, you want to name your project. You can hit the little pen icon and you can just name it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it test for now, but you can name this by specific lakes or seasons or tournaments or whatever you want. Next, we have to find the drawn down historical imagery. The way you do this is by clicking on the circle in the top right corner of the screen. You can then scroll down through the list and find the historical imagery option. Check that checkbox, and now you're going to have access to historical imagery. You'll see that there's a tab that gets pulled up at the bottom here, and if you click on that, you actually get a full historical imagery slider. You can click through that slider to see different images of the lake drawn down at different times. The one I'm interested in is this 2017 image. It's the lowest image I have on Beaver Lake. This is actually the area where I caught my first fish in this video, and we can see these nice rock transitions. Ideally, you want to mark these transitions and transfer these waypoints to your fish finder. The way you do this is by holding down on the screen to create a pin. You can then save the project, which is a project we created earlier, and just rename this. I'm going to name this rock for now just because I don't want to type out as many words, but you can name this whatever you want. You can then go and mark this out multiple times to get the entire piece of structure marked. So again, save to project, and then you can put rock and continue this process marking all of these transitions. You just have to hit the back arrow next to edit to kind of get out of there, to select another point, and you just keep doing this process over and over again until you have marked everything you want to mark. So I'm not going to mark everything in here. I'm just going to mark a few rocky areas, but there's so much to look at here, guys. I mean, I could go through on Google Earth for hours and hours and find so many different things. It's almost an unlimited number of things that you can mark, all these little boulders and things. which again, normally are actually going to be underwater. So if we go back to some different imagery, you can see a lot of times these boulders are covered up by the water, like on this fishing trip where this rock transition I was fishing was completely submerged. So even though you can see it in the drawn down imagery, but when you're back to normal pool, you can see these rock transitions are hidden and very, very hard to see unless we take that lake back down. Now that we have these waypoints marked, we can just go back to the main page by hitting the back arrow, and now you can see our projects. So you can see this test project we just created. To convert this to a file that you can put to your fish finder, you want to click the three dots on the right side of the screen and hit Export as KML. You can either email or text this KML file to yourself. After that, you want to take this file and put it through a website that'll convert it from a KML to a GPX file. That's what you need for most fish finders. I'll link a website down in the description that will allow you to do this. And then after you have that GPX file, you need to get it onto your fish finder. And this is different depending on the type of unit you have. And several years ago, I actually made a guide explaining how to transfer GPX files to your fish finder. It's free on my website, fishmoment.com. And I'll link that down in the description along with that website and a link to this Google Earth app. This is the full process. If you want a refresher on how to do it on the computer, I'll also link a video down below that shows the full step-by-step process, and it goes into a little more detail of how to convert files for like Hummingbird units and different things. So if you're still struggling with this process after watching this video, go check out that video because it has a very detailed step-by-step process that will allow you to do this same exact thing on a computer, and there's been thousands of guys that have followed that successfully, so definitely check out that video. Now let's get back to the lake.
And the way I'm working the swing head is just slowly winding that bait back. I'm using a heavier head, 3/4 ounce, to keep that bait maintaining bottom contact out here in that 6 to 8 foot range. I don't like throwing too light of a swing head because then you can't work that bait fast enough while maintaining bottom contact. I'm also throwing 14-pound fluorocarbon to help keep it down a little bit deeper. I'm going to fish through this area a little bit more thoroughly just because I caught a fish here, but I don't expect to be getting a ton of bites per spot. So I may just make a couple more casts here, and I have probably 30 of these spots marked. So my idea is just to hit as many as I can, maybe spending 5 to 10 minutes per area, and try to get as many spots hit in a given day to try to put a limit in the boat. This is the sketchiest boat dock on Beaver Lake, I feel like. There's 5 wires I just casted over. If I hook like a 4-pounder here, I'm absolutely screwed. But a lot of times, oh my gosh, I'm saying that, and good thing it's not a 4-pounder. They're just some decent fish. I was so worried on that. I'm glad I got that fish out of there. That boat dock, there were so many wires there. Nice little fish, nothing crazy, just flipping a little Picasso dock skipping jig. Not a big one. I'm actually on the back side of one of these little rock transitions. And I decided to pick up a jig and skip it around this boat dock because there's a lot of shade here, and there weren't any fish actually on the rock transition itself out there where I was fishing a swing head and a crankbait. But a lot of times when you have these boat dock ends where the actual walkways come in and it's a little bit steeper on the bank, you get enough depth around these that the fish can set up here. And I have a pretty good feeling that I can catch some good fish doing this today. It's just, some of these boat docks are pretty sketchy. Hit the wires, and man, if that was like a 4-pounder, I don't know if I would have got that fish back in the boat, to be honest. Got him, good one, there we go. Real good one out of this boat dock. Okay, I think I got the pattern now, guys. It's a good fish on a little Picasso flipping jig. That is a post-spawn fish. Look at that thing. I did not realize these fish had spawned on beaver yet. I need to be fishing some ledges or something. Look at that. That is a post-spawned out fish. Super, super torn up from the spawn, but that is a good one. Solid. That'd be like almost a 5-pounder if it was pre-spawn. Here we go, 3 pounds, 7 ounces to add my other 3-pounder. We are getting it today, guys. That is a crazy, crazy looking fish though. For the first day of April, these fish have definitely already spawned, at least up this river. Nice fish still though. Let's get him back down in the lake. There we go, guys. That's pretty wild, catching a pre-spawner and a post-spawner on the same day, on the first day of April. It's been unseasonably warm here in Arkansas, so it makes sense that there may have been some fish that have already spawned, and the fish spawn in different waves, so they don't all spawn at the exact same time. The spot we're fishing here too is almost identical to the first spot that we caught our fish on. I saw some rock transitions on Google Earth up this river. I marked them as we showed earlier, and this bank had that same look to it as the first bank we fished, and I was just skipping a jig around this boat dock here. The first fish was out in front of the boat dock. This fish was right off the boat dock itself, and this came on a Picasso half-ounce dock rocket jig. This is a pretty sweet little jig I've been experimenting with. It has a lot thicker skirting material than a standard jig you get out of the package, which I think will get bigger bites, and I just like to throw stuff that's a little bit different. So this is what I've been throwing recently, and I really like it. Pairing that with a Big Bite Baits college crawl in the green pumpkin color. And again, I'm kind of trying to do a little bit of both right now. The dock pattern, which has produced a couple of fish, as well as that swing head pattern, trying to keep those fish honest, those pre-spawners. And you kind of have a situation here where I can actually target both fish in both stages, which is really cool, given, you know, normally it's hard to do that in this time of the year. So I feel pretty good about the pattern I'm on. I'm just not getting very many bites. I'm having to cover a ton of water to actually get fish in the boat. So when I do get a bite, it seems to be a pretty decent one. I've caught a few smaller fish, you know, just little males and stuff like that, but I've had 2 really good bites, so hopefully this pattern holds up. I have all these rock transitions marked on Google Earth and transfer them to my waypoint or to my fish finder, and I'll link a video explaining how to do that as well if I haven't mentioned that already, and that way you guys can do the same process. But let's keep fishing some of these docks. There's a couple more up here I'm kind of interested in fishing, and let's see if we can get a few more bites. Okay, so we're here at another boat dock. I actually just fished 3 more docks down this stretch in front of the one where I just caught that nice fish and didn't get a bite. But we're on another dock here that's kind of on a little bit of a rock transition. It's more obvious, so I actually didn't mark it on Google Earth. But I want to show you how I actually approach these boat docks when I'm trying to target them. And hopefully we can get bit on this one. If not, then it's a pretty good sign that I only need to be running those docks with my waypoints that I've marked. But either way, what I like to do is always start on these boat docks on the actual walkways themselves. A lot of these fish will set up on these walkways around the little floats and any shade that you can get around. This one is a little bit annoying because it has this little boat ski-doo ramp here, but a lot of times they'll set up on these ramps as well. I would like to kind of hit that back corner if I can. I'll try to get a cast. That's not too bad of a cast there. And a lot of times you'll have wires and stuff around these back corners, so you got to be pretty careful at times when fishing them. But I like to make a few casts around that back corner. It doesn't seem like those fish are super set up on that right now. They're more, I guess, on a little bit of the steeper part of the dock from a couple bites I've got. So I'm really going to focus on this first main float. Now, this one's a little bit tricky because we have this pontoon boat here. What I'm going to do is just pitch my jig down the side of that dock, let that thing sink down there. I did have to cast over a chain, which is kind of sketchy, and there's always going to be some type of sketchy thing underneath these boat docks when you're fishing them. So don't get too worried about it. You have to get the fish out when you set the hook, but if you're not getting bit, it doesn't really matter. So I just like to put my bait back in there and figure it out later once I get the bite. But I like to fish these different boat stalls. I also try to hit all the way back into the middle, in those middle walkways when you have an open stall like this, because sometimes those fish are setting up on that. But I'm not going to worry about fishing the outsides of these docks right now because it's just really steep, and it's going to help me fish a little more efficiently and save some time around these boat docks, not fishing every single slip. Usually in the spring, I just like to fish the first 2 slips plus the walkway, and on this dock in particular, I'm not even going to go hit the other side. Sometimes I will, but it doesn't seem like these fish are on these stretches that I haven't marked with a waypoint. So that is a good sign, at least, that we can pattern these docks a lot better. The worst case scenario sometimes is when you have to fish every single dock in the lake and you can't figure out a pattern. So let's go try to find a few more docks that match up on that pattern with some rock around them and see if we can get a few more bites. Got him. There we go. Oh my gosh, these fish actually came up busting here, guys. I was working my way through this little rock transition, and these fish started busting out here on some shad, and I picked up a little glide bait that I just had in the box. It was just the only thing I had that was a moving bait. This is the Bent Bill Customs little bender. This is a sweet little glide bait. Nice little fish. I'm gonna get back out there. They're just busting over here, literally just randomly busting. I don't know what they're doing, why they're here. They're just in this pocket and just throwing this glide over to them. Whenever you see fish busting like this glide bait is one of my favorite, this little tiny one is one of my favorite ways to get these fish to bite this time of year. A lot of times I just kind of slowly wind it in. That's how that fish ate it. Sometimes you twitch it, give it a few random types of action, and kind of crazy that they ate that. They're just out here in the middle of this pocket chasing shad. So kind of a random deal here. Maybe there's more fish I can catch just throwing this glide down these rocks though. Oh, come on, fish. Got him. There he is. Just randomly throwing out here. I saw another one busting. This is a decent fish actually right here. I don't know what they're doing right here, guys. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, I guess. I am on one of these little rock transition spots, but another one on that glide. That's actually a fatty. Look at that fish. That's a good keeper on that glide. I love this little glide bait, guys. It smashes them. No forward-facing sonar. These fish are just on bait, and I just happen to be around them, and that little glide will pull them from a long distance. That's a solid little fish. Actually, let me get a weight on that guy. That's a nice keeper. I mean, just a solid 2-pounder, 15-incher, but that is awesome right there, guys. Nice little chunky fish. There's a bunch of fish just kind of busting here. I'm in a very similar area where I have a rock transition, and it's a little bit deeper here, and these fish are just kind of out here on bait for some reason in this little pocket. And again, no forward-facing sonar on the boat, so if I had like a Damiki rig or I don't know, something like that, probably could go through here and pick some off. But without that, a lot of times I find this little glide bait really gets the job done well, and you just kind of have to get, oh, one just tried to hit it right there. Oh, one just sharked it right there. Come on, fish, get it. Oh, there he is. Nice one on the glide, just literally out here randomly, guys. They're obviously on bait, but there we go. They're just kind of out in the open. Another nice fish. Every single cast with this little glide bait, guys. This is fun right here. Back down there. I can't really tell you too much of what's going on. Honestly, what we have going on here is just a nice rock transition, very similar to what we've been looking at, just a rocky point that sticks out here. Same exact thing where we've been catching them on the jig. It's just these fish are up here suspended on the bait, kind of out here in front of this point rather than up on the point. And this is something that you kind of got to pay attention to, guys, a lot of times when you're fishing. You can't get locked in on one bait, one deal, because right now they're not wanting that bottom bait here, obviously, because they're blowing up on shad. So having a few different baits and a few different options can be helpful. And this area sets up, again, exactly to our pattern. It's just not exactly the same positioning of the fish. So we're still able to locate good areas. Just have to kind of trick them on different things at different times to get them to bite. Yep, there we go. Right here on this string. Oh, crap, came off. Ran a transition here again. Finally, another fish on the swing head, guys. Took me a second to, I guess, figure out what they were doing, but this is another just transition bank into a really flat area. And it's just a weird transition, to be honest, because it doesn't look like a channel or anything runs around here, but there's a really obvious rock transition. And I just kind of threw out here where I kind of felt like that transition was going to happen further off the bank here, and that fish crushed it. It wasn't a big one, but right where I was expecting him to be, so that's a good sign. I mean, I feel like we're on a decent pattern here. I just don't know if, I don't know exactly what to do in terms of getting the numbers. The numbers are not here on this pattern. I can get a bite here and there and get, you know, some decent fish eventually, but it's a pretty big grind, to be honest, to get this pattern rolling. And I've only been fishing for basically about 4 hours, so it's not like I've been out here for that long. So it's doing pretty good, I guess. But I'd like to be catching more, or at least getting a sense for what these fish are doing a little bit better, rather than just random fish here, random fish there. And I don't know. It feels decent, but I feel like there's got to be something better today. Well guys, I'm going to call it a day here, but before I do, I want to walk you through all the gear I was using in today's video. The first keeper I caught was a 3-pounder, and it was on a swing head. This is my go-to swing head. It's the Big Bite Baits 3/4 ounce swing head in the green pumpkin color with a 3/0 hook. I was throwing that with a Crush City cleanup craw, and my go-to normal trailer on a swing head is a Menace grub from Strike King. But because the water was dirtier here, I wanted to go with the cleanup craw. It has the same profile, but it has a little bit more action, and those tails kick a little bit more, which I like in the dirtier water. I was pairing that on 14-pound fluorocarbon line with a Denali Lithium Pro 7'4" medium heavy power fast action worm and jig rod. I have this with a new reel I got from the guys at Baits at the Bassmaster Classic. It's the Baits Hundo. It is a sweet reel. It's the nicest reel I've ever owned, and it is kind of spoiling me right now because I'm going back to my $30 Black Maxes, and I'm thinking, man, this reel is pretty nice. But anyways, it's a sweet reel and casts that swing head an absolute mile, so really like that. Next up is my jig setup, and again I was throwing this Picasso 1/2 ounce Dock Rocket jig. It has a hand-tied old school rubber skirt, it's extra thick, and it falls great through the water. A little bit slower fall than your standard jig, but it has a heavy enough weight where I can skip it super easily. Pairing it with a Big Bite Baits college craw in the green pumpkin color. I was throwing 20-pound fluorocarbon with an Abu Garcia Max Pro reel. Again, picked this up at Walmart probably 5 years ago, and it still works pretty well. Maybe not as well as that Baits reel, but it still allows me to skip around pretty decent. And I was pairing this with a little bit heavier power rod. This is a heavy power 7'4" fast action rod in the Denali Lithium Pro lineup. It is still a worm and jig rod, just like the last rod I talked about, but I like to throw my swing heads on a little bit of a lighter rod, even though the baits can get kind of heavy, just because I want to give those fish a second to kind of get that bait in their mouth. So I go with a medium heavy with the swing head versus a heavy power with my flipping jigs. So that jig, I just want to set the hook hard and get him in the boat. So that was my jig setup, and that's what I caught my biggest fish of the day on. Last but not least is my glide bait setup. This is a sneaky little bait that's made by a local company in my area called Bent Bill Custom Tackle. You can pick up these baits, it's called the Little Bender, at Tulsa Tackle over in Oklahoma, as well as Hook, Line, and Sinker by Beaver Lake here in northwest Arkansas. The Little Bender glide bait is smaller than pretty much any glide bait on the market, but it has just an amazing little wobble to it. It's tuned so that you can just straight retrieve it or chop it side to side, and I actually have gone out fishing with the owner before and crushed them on this bait. So I have caught some really big fish on it, lots of numbers, and it's a bait that I'm gonna have tied on a ton over the next few months as these fish are setting up a little bit shallower. It's a little bit of a tough bait to throw just because it's a little bit lighter than the standard glide bait. So I actually throw it on a 7-foot medium power moderate action crankbait rod, the same rod I'd actually throw a jerkbait on, which is kind of crazy given that this bait seems like it's pretty big, but it doesn't cast always the best, especially on a heavier power rod. In addition, I'm throwing it on pretty light line. Right now I'm throwing it on 12-pound fluorocarbon just because that was what was on my jerkbait rod. I would normally go up to maybe 14-pound, but you're not gonna get this bait around too much cover most of the time or anything, so you don't have to worry about breaking off. I will recommend retying though after every trip because these baits aren't cheap and you don't want to cast one off or anything like that. But it is a great bait, especially in this kind of late pre-spawn, through the spawn and into the post-spawn, and then basically all summer long. This bait is absolutely dynamite. So those are my 3 setups I was using. Honestly, today, guys, was kind of a grind. I ended up catching probably 10 fish. I caught some small ones off camera I didn't show. And I had 2 really good ones, 2 3+ pounders, which on Beaver Lake is a quality fish. If you have 5 fish for 15 pounds, so a 3-pound average, you're top 5ing, maybe top 10ing any tournament, any time of the year basically out here. So We were on track to get some better quality bites. I only fished for about 5.5 hours, so I still had some extra time. I also missed that morning bite, so I think that if I had a little bit more time in the morning, maybe to do a few other morning-ish patterns rather than just getting out here at like 10 o'clock, I probably would have been able to get a few more fish in the boat. But either way, it was still a pretty productive day finding fish on those rock transitions, and hopefully if you are on your lake and you have a Google Earth image where the lake is drawn down even just a little bit, you should be able to find those rock transition banks, mark them, and then try to make sure you have them on your fish finders. When you run around the lake, you can know where you can stop and save a lot of time instead of just fishing a bunch of random banks, only fishing those good banks that have the stuff you're looking for. Hopefully this video is helpful, guys. If you enjoyed, leave a comment down below. And other than that, see you guys in the next video.